Ironically fitting to get back to this on Election Day. Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with Carol and the End of the World, episode 2. So, it's been a while since we got to the first episode of this. This is what won our poll, so that's why we're continuing this at the moment. But just to reiterate, let me see if I can find it here, as to when we first reacted to the first episode of this, I believe, and it seems I was correct, that it was December of 2023. It's been almost a full year since we reacted to the first episode as a first impression. So, let's go over what I remember. So, Carol is kind of an ordinary woman. She lives a normal life, but doesn't really have like anything special about her. When it's announced that the world's going to end, that they have a limited time left, the entire world kind of goes crazy, goes into party mode. It's like, oh, we're going to do what we've always wanted to do. We're going to live our best lives, carpe diem and all that. But Carol just wants a sense of normalcy. Despite everything going on, she wants to feel like things are okay. That, oh, if she acknowledges the world's going to end and starts partying it up and everything, it's just letting your fate happen. But if you choose instead to live your life as you kind of always have, you are instead choosing to just kind of not really ignore it, but move forward in a way that allows you to not lead yourself into a panic, basically. Because let's be honest, that would absolutely happen. All these people who are like celebrating, partying, getting super drunk and everything, it's like when that day comes, there's not going to be any fun left to have. They're going to be panicked, they're going to be scared, they're going to be like in absolute like self-destructive mode. While Carol, who wants to live like her normal life this entire time, will finally find satisfaction in the end, having chosen to be who she's always been rather than force an idyllic lifestyle on herself that isn't really going to matter. Along the way, we see other characters throughout this. We see her parents who have like kind of undergone this nudist ideology and are kind of in a throuple with their live-in nurse. They're going on vacation, I believe, as well. We have this one guy who she meets who gets not creepily obsessed with her, but very like depressingly obsessed with her because he's so scared and has no one, and he really just kind of in the same way needs a sense of normalcy to be able to survive. Unfortunately, he unfairly puts that on her, and it doesn't really go well because of that. But in the end, Carol ended up finding a single location, a building where a bunch of people were, well, living normal lives, doing normal work, everyday boring shit. That may not matter in the end. It's not going to amount to much when the world ends, but it allows for this sense of normalcy. And Carol finds that she's not alone. It was a really strong starting episode that really just gave a very mature, in-depth look at what it means to be looking forward to a future that you see no hope in. Not even necessarily just in the case of a literal world-ending apocalypse, but you could see this, like, relevant today, the 2024 presidential election of the United States. Let's get fucking political, because I have chocolate raspberry wine and a lot of issues. So, for those who may be outside of the US, looking in, I kind of wonder what you think about this shit show of a political system we have. We have a two-party system that is so rigged against the American people, it's not funny, and is absolutely fucked up to the point that a lot of us, every election cycle, pretty much have no hope. We have no hope that anything's going to change, that anything's going to positively be affected, that things are going to be able to get better. And the reason for this is because on the Republican side, we have sociopaths and fascists. And on the Democratic side, we just have, people who just won't do enough to actually change things for the better. One side is just monstrously worse than the other. They are not the same. I hate it when people say that shit. But neither side is good. Both sides are bad. One is exceptionally worse than the other, and there is only one correct decision you can make in voting in the US in terms of morality and ethics. And it should not be the case. It's pretty well understood that the US voting system is fucked beyond measure. That the system we have does not work, and it has caused way more problems than any even slight inkling of good. So what do we do about it? And that's where the hopelessness comes in, because there's nothing we fucking can. Like, people will tell you, oh, vote for your favorite candidates and everything. Vote for the ones who will do the best and make sure the best things happen. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect anything in the long run. We're not going to get rid of this rigged voting system. We're not going to get out of a two-party system, which is extremely corrupt as fuck. Your vote really doesn't matter because, a candidate can win with amount of votes but lose the election because of this stupid fucking electoral college bullshit. A lot of us don't have any fucking hope. But the one thing that many of us basically have to find something in is that, again, one party is just so insanely worse than the other that we basically have no choice but to back the lesser of two evils. And mind you, that phrase as well is not exactly entirely accurate, because only one party is evil. The other one's just, misguided and messed up. But we have to back the blue, no matter who, because it protects people's rights, people's safety, our ability to exist in a lot of cases. Especially for people of color, queer people, and just anyone who's not a straight cisgender white man, basically. If you don't fall into that singular group of people, the the right in this country is actively not just your enemy, but a mortal danger to you. And yet we still keep it going because, we're not actually going to do anything to change it. So when we kind of have to deal with this stuff, the only thing that really helps is to delve into regular everyday life, to find that sense of normalcy that helps us. And then on like election day itself, we get drunk and rant and just try to deal with our stress while we wait for the news that's, going to affect us for the next 4 years, possibly longer, depending on. So, yeah, fun. But Carol's perspective here of like just wanting to live a normal life and have that sense of normalcy going into the end, I feel like is something that we should all strive for. We should want to be like Carol. She's inspirational. The problem is, for the most part, we won't be. It's not that we can't, it's just we won't. For various reasons. Like one or two of us might choose to be a Carol in the world, but most of us are just, crazed, anxious creatures who won't be able to properly function. And it's just it sucks. So the question is, where do we go from there? Do we just leave America? No, because that's like not even reasonable. That's way too fucking expensive and difficult to actively choose to do. We could try a revolution, but it's like that probably wouldn't end well for a number of reasons. And we don't need to be doing stuff that's just going to, cause needless deaths. Like I said, there's really nothing we can do. And sorry if this rant just seems hopeless and dark and everything. It's just that day. But hopefully this series and hopefully Carol gives me some kind of level of, something to look forward to, something to find some level of hope in. We'll see. We will see. That being said, thank you as always so much for tuning in. And for now, we're going to go on and get into this. So let's see what this episode of Carol and the Underworld has in store. Cutting in here real quick to remind you of all the awesome content we have on the channel. Between Monday and Friday, we have a plethora of awesome series reactions, with 2 on Wednesday. We also have movie reactions every Saturday and Sunday. I pre-record them during the week, but upload them on the weekend. And don't forget about the gaming channel. We have Baldur's Gate 3 every single day. We have Horizon Forbidden West every Monday and Friday. Tuesdays and Thursdays is Life is Strange Double Exposure. And Wednesdays and Sundays is Beyond Two Souls. On Saturdays, we have both Poppy Playtime and Nier Automata. And on top of that, don't forget to click the link in the description below to get to today's reaction. I redirect everything just due to copyright. You know how it is. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you want to see more awesome content such as this. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, let's get to today's reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, The Distraction. A place of administrative business where these people go to, well, distract themselves from impending doom. A mind-numbing place where, well, while happy and distracted, they are just not really existing outside of the bare minimum. They're doing these mundane jobs that don't really amount to much, right? There's not really anything to be administrative for. But they're doing it to distract themselves. All these files, all these documents, all this printing. It's stuff that they feel the need to busy themselves with in order to forget about the fact that their world's going to come to an end. And so throughout this episode, we see Carol start to kind of evolve. We see at the beginning how she's really confused and distracted by this place. She tries to treat it like any kind of like social job. But it's not one. And soon she too becomes lost in the busyness. She becomes kind of really into the distraction. But the facade does soon fade. And she realizes that while it is distracting her from impending doom, what's the point? No one's talking to each other. Even communication through the phone is done via pre-recorded messages. The only time she had any interaction via talking was with the hiring manager who she first met, and it was just the one time. Everything since then was via phone. She's constantly being watched by the bosses. She's trying to form connections. Even when she goes out, she's like, oh, does anyone want anything? I can pick you up something, apple, nuts, yogurt. But no one responds because they want to be distracted. They're not here for personal relationships. And enter Donna, the first person to have a true reaction to her at this distraction. While meeting in the kitchen, Donna getting, a coffee, she reacts to her. She sees Carol, sees how confused and alone Carol's been, and has a visible reaction to it. And not a reaction of judgment or annoyance or anything, but one of pity, of sorrow. A reaction that very clearly shows she wants to reach out to Carol, but is afraid to. That just like everyone else here, she's trying to distract herself. And we don't know her life. We don't know why. But it doesn't matter. Because it gives her a sense of purpose and comfort in a world that's falling apart. And she's afraid to step out of that. So she walks away. And Carol returns to going through the motions, trying to find the toner, trying to interact with everybody. And she's not only liking this job less and less as it goes on, but finding it so mind-numbingly, like, soul-crushing that it's causing her extreme mental distress. At one point, one of her coworkers puts a gun in her desk. Presumably, he notices like her emotions, and I'm sorry. It's so obvious that he's giving her a way out. If you understand, he's giving her a way to commit suicide, to end it, and not have to live through this anymore. And it scares her. And yet, as we see, she still takes the gun. When she goes to this Tibetan party that some friends, some colleagues of hers throw, she becomes so overwhelmed that she has to go off on her own, and eventually comes across, just through wandering, a printer with the exact toner she needs. And she snaps. She breaks out of her shell. And although she's consistently extremely apologetic about it, because she's not going to kill anyone, and no one would ever think she would, she threatens her own friend with a gun and tells her, I'm taking this. And it might seem like a mundane thing. The end of the world is 6 months or so away, and she's taking toner. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But I think the reason why her friend was so against it was because of it not being Carol. I almost feel like she was trying to save Carol from that. It's like, this isn't you. Don't be this person. And she was scared. She was like tearing up. She was so scared. I mean, she had a gun pointed at her. I would be pissing myself. I would be shitting myself. I would be probably puking and rocking back and forth crying. I don't handle stress well as it is. If a gun was being actively pointed at me in a threatening manner, I would probably be in a very, very bad state. More than usual, I mean. But she manages to leave, and when she gets back, she finds that it was kind of all for nothing. Because Donna had replaced the toner. Because there's apparently a whole closet full of them on a different floor. But no one would tell her this. She had no way to know this. So what else was she supposed to do? And through this entire situation, the thing that made her come out of her shell wasn't even her standing up for herself and finding her voice. Like, that moment definitely helped her. It helped her emotionally and helped her realize that she can't just go through the motions, that she has to do something. That mind-numbingly going through the motions is going to just have a really bad effect on her mental health. But what really changed her was finally having someone to talk to. Someone who very clearly was going through the same kind of mind-numbing fear and paralysis that she had been. Donna finally speaks up. And the butterfly comes out of its cocoon. Carol doesn't hide back. She doesn't stray away. She doesn't ignore it or whisper under her breath. She responds. And a friend is formed. And I don't know how strong their friendship's going to become, but I have a feeling it's going to be a big part of this series. And speaking of, at the beginning of this, we have, let me get his name here real quick, because I don't remember if it actually said his name in the episode, but I have the thing up here anyway. Eric. It said his son's name like a couple times, but I don't think it said his. But Eric, after basically having been dumped by Carol, even though there was no relationship in the first place, is a mess. He's not doing well because he's depressed as fuck. Dude is going through it. And this was his hope. Just like the distraction was for Carol, Carol herself was his hope. And just like Carol, it failed him. It didn't end up bringing him happiness. It didn't end up working out. And we haven't seen where his story goes yet. We haven't seen what becomes of him yet. We've only seen his crash. And we have to hope that just like Carol, he will rise as well. We see his son reaching out to her. We see that he's trying to get his father help from Carol, but she's ignoring it. She's not wanting to get involved, and I understand why. I get it. But maybe through this relationship with Donna, it'll help her at least be able to talk to Eric a little more and really like understand him more. When I didn't even choose, but when I ended up getting this series on the wheel next, I didn't even think about how a show like this could connect to real life currently, even if not the same circumstances and all. A lot of the emotions and feelings are very intensely real right now. I talked about this in the pre-thoughts, how with this being election day and with the 2024 American presidential election being an absolute shit show, and especially with the system we have in this country and how it's rigged against the citizens, I and many others have started to lose hope. And many people have found something to latch onto for a sense of normalcy, a sense of distraction, something to make them think that it's going to be okay. And that's come in various different things. Some people latched on to Kamala Harris. Some people have latched on to video games or movies. Some people have latched on to other people or their pets. People have been finding their distraction from all the fear and pain and just valid anger that they're feeling this election season. And I don't always show like my emotions on my sleeve very well. I've talked about this before. I'm not entirely stoic, but I'm not the most emotive person either. And that especially comes with negative emotions, because when I get like extremely negative, I don't get loud with my emotions. I shut down. What I mean is when some people get like extremely angry, they shout, they rage, they punch things. I don't do that. I seethe. When I'm extremely sad, I just kind of like sit there and disassociate. Others will like cry and just slump around and be barely responsive. But I go into shutdown mode. Whenever a negative emotion overpowers me, my brain tells me not to run, not to fight, but to just shut it out. And the first thing that distracts me, I latch onto. As someone who's autistic, I find anything I can, and I will latch onto it with like vice grip intensity to distract myself from everything I'm feeling. And even if I don't show it emotively on my face, I feel emotions extremely intensely. When I'm sad, I am like depressed, like literally depressed. When I'm angry, I'm like I could hurt someone if I don't keep myself like, you know, stoic. And if my mind doesn't shut me down, I could cause physical harm to myself or others. My mind shutting me down is almost like a defense mechanism, defending again myself or others from myself. And I'm glad that I do that. And again, it's just something that happens. It's not something I choose to do. So it's like the best involuntary response, but it also makes it hard for me to express myself. And when I'm faced with something that leaves me hopeless, I will find whatever I can to distract myself, whether it be watching a show, playing a game, even just scrolling endlessly through TikTok. Because I want a distraction. And then I engage in the distraction so much that it starts to fade for me. And I become just apathetic towards it. And at that point, I either just have to choose something else or try to find some other way to cope. And I most often choose the former. I just move on to my next hyperfixation, basically. It's not healthy, and I know it's not healthy. And that's when I need people the most. Whether it's you guys on the Discord or in comments, or friends I have in my life, at conventions, at church, and various places like that, even sometimes on social media. Like, in a way, distracting me from the distraction itself and interacting with me helps me come out of that funk. Allows me to open up and broaden my social horizons. And there are multiple points in this episode that I was like on the verge of like just breaking down in tears because it was honestly very much affecting me. Um Going with what I was saying, I don't know if it was clear, but there were a lot of points in this where I was pretty quiet, and it was because I was kind of shutting myself down. Again, subconsciously, it wasn't a thing I'm actively choosing to do, but I was like so engaged in this, and I was connecting so hard with Carol. Again, even if through different specific circumstances, I was connecting with the basic idea of this all. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, really fucking hard. After I stopped the recording, I actually did let go and cry. And I believe the same thing happened with episode 1, funny enough. I believe episode 1 made me cry as well. It sucks when shows like this aren't talked about enough, especially when it comes to adult animation, because it's very obviously an adult series. This isn't a series you should ever show to kids for a number of reasons. This is an adult animated series, but whenever people talk about those kind of shows, they talk about Rick and Morty, they talk about Family Guy, they talk about the shows that are, crass for the sake of being crass. This show is more mature than I think most, if not all, of those other shows put together. Because it's actually an adult oriented series. It's not just immature juvenile jokes. It's actually touching on very important, very intense, very emotional adult topics that I feel like most people can to some degree relate to. And that's terrifying, but also freeing. I can look at this series, I can look at Carol and say, that's me. I see myself in her. Both the good and the bad. But more importantly, the room for improvement. The space to grow and to become someone better, not because of going on all these trips or engaging in like sex parties or living out my bucket list, but by expanding who I am as a person and finding something worth living for, something that will make the end of days worthwhile. It's it's really impressive how this show can just elicit such strong emotions and not bum me the fuck out. Because I think the last show that like hit me in the same way that this is, I think it was Doom Patrol. But the big difference is that Doom Patrol is so the opposite end of the spectrum with this. Doom Patrol is the same kind of lessons, the same kind of connectivity, the same kind of characters who you just relate to on such a deeply spiritual level, and yet it's so negative. And I don't mean that as a bad thing because it's like that for a reason, but by God, it's so hard to sit through. It's so dark and emotional and just leaves me feeling bad after watching. And then you have this, which is again the same concept, but delivered in a much more positive manner. It allows us to see it as, you know, something to look forward to rather than something to turn away from. And that's all I could really ask for with this. A show that's going to get deeply personal and intense, but make me feel good about myself after watching. Make me feel like if Carol can grow like this, why can't I? I haven't watched the first episode since I first reacted to it. Partially because I didn't see anyone else reacting to it, and also because I just didn't get to it again. But even from what I remember of it, and now with this second episode, knowing that this is only 10 episodes long is so fucking perfect that I'm like, I I don't know what this is going to end like. There's a lot of different ways this could go. But I don't think a show like this should be more than 10 episodes. I don't know if there's been plans, but I do not think this should get a second season. This is one of those shows, I'm just saying right now, it's not that it doesn't deserve a second season, it absolutely would. I think a second season would ruin this series. This needs to be like Over the Garden Wall, a single season short form series that is meant to tell one story. And going beyond that would just not work. Not everything needs multiple seasons. And I feel like this show proves it. Because if this show really makes the absolute most every episode out of its 10, could easily be my series of the year. Easily. I have a lot to think about with this. And obviously we'll continue going through the episodes each week. But it's like there's just so much about this that has me not just invested, but aggressively like attached to this series. And the fact that I hear no one ever talking about this really irritates the shit out of me right now. I know I'm getting like super personal and emotional and very soft spoken. Let's kind of break that up real quick. I'm really fucking pissed that no one talks about this show. On Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Facebook, I have not seen anyone talking about this. And I'm talking about since I first saw the first episode back in December. No one has been talking about this, and I'm so peeved about that. And it's just, I can't understand why more people haven't seen this and are raving about this. They absolutely should be. But, I mean, honestly, I think the same about Link Click. And the fact that I'm comparing this to Link Click, if you understand how big of a fucking deal that is for me, Link Click is one of my favorites. Like, it is right up there with the likes of Carol and Tuesday and One Piece for me. Link Click, through its 2 seasons we've gotten so far, is, like, astoundingly phenomenal. And based on these first 2 episodes alone, I kind of genuinely think that this could be too. That this series could absolutely be on that level if it sticks the landing. I'm really invested to see what happens with Carol, with Donna, with Eric and his son. It would be wild to see if, like, at the end of this series, one of the, like, maybe opening shots of the final episode comes into this office and everyone's chatting and talking to each other. And they're just, laughing and joking and they're friends because of Carol. That would be such a phenomenal moment. And now I really want it to happen, really hope it does. I am not looking up spoilers, and do not spoil me on this. Like, I am very serious here. I will not stand for that. Do not spoil this for me. Not this one. I mean, don't spoil anything for me, but do not spoil Carol and the end of the world for me. this is the series I've been looking for. Very specifically, the series I've been looking for lately that just understands what I'm going through, emotionally and mentally. And it's something that I very much needed at this point in my life and with where my mind's been at. Sometimes it just feels like destiny. The wheel showed me an insane amount of love with this pick. And I just wish I had gotten to this again sooner. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 2 of Carol and the End of the World? Did it hit you as emotionally as it did me? Let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.